Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Batman Knightsend. Now, technically, we're almost done, guys. Honestly, after this video right here, we only have one more video to cover, and that would be the Aftermath storyline for the Nightfalls trilogy. But once we're done with Knightsend, we're going to move on to something else when it comes to our DC Comics coverage. But with all that being said, this video does pick up where our last video had left off at, where you have Bruce Wayne trying his best to take away the mantle of Batman away from John Paul Valley, who was Batman for a good period of time in DC Comics. Now, just in case you are new to my channel or new to DC Comics, let me go ahead and just briefly explain what's going on when it comes to Knightsend. Because for some folks out there, Knight's Fall was just one big storyline, and that was truthfully it. They don't know the whole idea that Knight's Fall was really a trilogy. And let me explain. You see, when it came to DC Comics, when they gave us Nightfall's main purpose was to get rid of Bruce Wayne. And so you have Bane come in there, break the bat, and that was Knight's Fall. Now, Night Quest was really more the idea of John Paul Valley now being the new Batman. Now, technically, when it came to Night Quest, you had two different storylines. You had Night Quest the Crusade and Night Quest the Search. Now, the Crusade was really more about John Paul Valley being Batman, but kind of seeing him go down this dark path and beginning to cross some lines as Batman and kind of showing that maybe he's not ready to be the next Batman for Gotham City. Now, when it comes to Night Quest The Search, it was more the idea of Bruce Wayne going out of his way to find two characters, Sandra Kinsolving and also Jack Drake. Now, once those stories kind of wrap up, you also have Bruce Wayne being able to get his back healed up. It all went into Knightsend. And really, Knightsend is the whole idea of Bruce Wayne saying, okay, John Paul has crossed the line. It's now time for me to step in and regain the mantle of Batman. But for Bruce, he kind of realized that he was not really ready to take on John Paul Valley. So the first half of Knightsend was really more of Bruce Wayne trying to train with Lady Shiva to hopefully get back into that position where he should be able to take on John Paul Valley. After a while, he was ready. And that kind of leads us into the point of Knightsend where you now have John Paul Valley trying to fight Bruce Wayne for control of the Batman mantle. Now, this video does pick up where our last video left off at. The whole idea where you had John Paul Valley trying to go after a character known as Selkirk. Now, Selkirk was this crime boss in Gotham City who was just out there trying to sell weapons, and that was really it. But for John Paul Valley, he believed that Selkirk could have major connections to a different character, and that would be Carlton Lee Hall. Now, Carlton Lee Hall was the person who had killed off John Paul Valley's father. And so for John Paul, he believes if he used Selkirk as a way to get to Carlton Lee Hall, he will then be able to get revenge for his father's death. Now, while you had John Paul Valley trying to go after Selkirk, you also had Selina Kyle as well going after Selkirk. Now, for her, it was a completely different reason. And technically, by this point in our coverage over Knightsend, it does not really matter at all. Just know that when it came to Selkirk, he had some device that could help someone be able to walk again. And for Selina, she had a friend that needed that device. And so that is why she was going after Selkirk. But while you had the two characters trying to go after Selkirk, you had Bruce Wayne appear. You had Tim Drake Robin and also Nightwing as well appear to try to fight against John Paul Valley. Now, as the fight went on, you had Selkirk try to get away on a helicopter. And you had Selina being able to get inside the helicopter as well. But for John Paul Valley, he shot a grapple that was able to hook itself onto the helicopter that belonged to Selkirk. And you didn't have Batman, Bruce Wayne, grab onto John Paul Valley. So you have both guys just hanging for their lives while you have Selina trying to go out of Selkirk inside the helicopter. And so that leads into the opening pages for today's storyline. And so diving into Shadow of the Bat issue number 30 is really more of us just seeing John Paul and also Bruce Wayne just hanging for their lives, while you have Selina Kyle inside the helicopter going after Selkirk. Now, you have Nightwing and also Robin trying their best to follow where the helicopter goes. Now, we do get a few action scenes in these opening pages, but I kind of want to focus more on what John Paul is saying to Bruce Wayne, because to John Paul, he truly believes by this point he is Batman, that Bruce Wayne is technically an imposter. The role now belongs to him, and that is it, because for John Paul Valley, he has done a better job being Batman than Bruce Wayne has. Now, for our two Batmen, they continue to fight against each other, but after a while, you do have the helicopter crash on a nearby bridge in Gotham City. And so with the helicopter crashing on a bridge in Gotham City, it's now Bruce Wayne Batman, Nightwing, and also Tim Drake Robin trying their best to save anybody's life who could possibly be hurt by any falling debris from the helicopter. Now, for Selina Kyle, it's more of that she fell out of the helicopter, got hit in the head by a falling piece of the helicopter, so she's knocked out. But you do have Bruce Wayne being able to save her life at the very last second before she had fallen to her death. But while trying to save her life, you have John Paul Valley continue the battle between him and Bruce Wayne. Like, this is John Paul saying, no, I need you to die. You do not deserve the role of Batman anymore. Now, for me personally, I was kind of bothered about the idea of Jim Gordon not being really used a lot in Knightsend. And for me, it really did bother me a whole lot more where they would show him for like 2 or 3 panels, and that would be it for the storyline in each of our videos. So for example, is Jim hearing right now what's happening on the bridge in Gotham City? And his goal is to get there in a hurry. But again, he does not play a major role in this storyline. Now, I kind of want to go ahead and jump back over to the battle between Bruce Wayne and also John Paul Valley. Here's the reason why, because why you have the two characters battling against each other is really more of John Paul Valley trying to prove that he is Batman by giving us a few more examples of why he believes that he is the better Batman. Like, for example, starting off with the fact that for John Paul Valley, he was the one who had defeated Bane. It wasn't Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne lost to Bane. It was John Paul being able to come back around and take down the guy who had basically broke the bat, which was Bane. And so for John Paul, that right there is a good enough reason to be the Batman. But on top of that is John Paul saying, I am finally combining the two roles in my life into one. The role of Azrael and the role of Batman coming together as one. Now, as the battle continue on, you have the helicopter begin to leak out fuel. Now, that is really important because by the end of the battle, you have John Paul Valley being able to get that edge over Bruce Wayne to the point where it seems like he might drop Bruce to his death. But while holding on to Bruce Wayne, you have fuel leaking all around them. And you have John Paul Valley trying to use his flamethrower to hopefully kill off Bruce Wayne, which of course does light himself on fire and giving Bruce a way to get away from John Paul Valley while John Paul falls into the river, burning alive. Now for John Paul Valley, he does survive the fall, but also he survives the flames as well. But while he's trying to recover, we get into the point where you're going to have Selina Kyle kind of leave the storyline because again, she was not really a major character in the storyline. They kind of had to use her book at that time to kind of help get Knightsend out there for fans to read at a good amount of time. Now, with that being said, you do have her and Bruce Wayne being able to help Selkirk and his guys get away from the helicopter that was going to blow up. Now, again, for Selina, she was only here for a device that Selkirk had. But once he found out what she wanted, he basically grabbed a device and threw it into the river. So now it's lost forever. But again, she did help Batman be able to get Selkirk and his two guys away from the helicopter before it was blown up. But after doing all of that, you then have Bruce Wayne run over to the Batmobile. Now, for John Paul Valley, he has the vehicle rigged. Unless you know how to get through his security measures, the vehicle is going to blow up. And matter of fact, it happens. The vehicle blows up. And so we're kind of left to believe that Bruce Wayne is dead. And you have Nightwing and Robin freaking out, but now they're being confronted by John Paul Valley. It's up to them, it seems like, to bring down this man. And really, it's more of John Paul Valley going up against Dick Grayson. And I think that's why I really do like Detective Comics issue number 677. And the reason why, because it gives Dick Grayson that time to shine. You know what I mean? Like, for Dick Grayson, he is Nightwing. He should have been the next Batman when Bruce got his back broken. But the problem was Bruce chose John Paul Valley, somebody he only met recently. Now, we also got an excuse, a lame excuse, where Bruce said, hey, Dick Grayson is out there on his own, being his own man. Like, hey, we don't talk as much as we used to. But for me, that's a lame excuse because right here, you're seeing Dick Grayson being that man who's very upset about the idea that Batman could possibly be dead. He wants to take on John Paul Valley by himself. But while you have Dick Grayson doing that, you have Tim Drake Robin going out of his way to help out the innocent people who are still being affected by this big battle going on between the Batmen across all of Gotham City. But really, this chapter alone is really more focusing on Dick Grayson fighting against John Paul Valley Batman. And for me personally, the next section really shows that it's Bruce Wayne realizing that he should have chose Dick Grayson to be the next Batman, because you have Bruce Wayne reappear to kind of show us that, yeah, he did survive the explosion from earlier. But either way, it's also Bruce telling Tim, we got to go somewhere else. Now, for Robin, it's more of, hey, why aren't we going out of our way to make sure that Dick survived the battle against John Paul Valley? But it's Bruce saying, I know that Dick will most likely survive against John Paul Valley. But for us, we have to go somewhere else. And for Dick, I know that he knows when is the right moment to step away from a battle. But either way, I have faith that Dick will be okay. Now, you do have the GCPD arrive, and really, they do kind of play a somewhat role after Knightsend when it comes to the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Jim Gordon. But for right now, they don't really play a major role in Knightsend. Now, getting back over to the battle between Dick Grayson and also John Paul Valley, this really shows that Dick Grayson should have been the next Batman. And here's the reason why, because you have Dick Grayson who truly does believe that Bruce Wayne is dead. He has no idea that Bruce Wayne has survived the explosion earlier. But also, it's Dick Grayson being able to go toe-to-toe with John Paul Valley. But on top of that, John Paul Valley has struggled earlier with Bruce Wayne. And so for me personally, it shows that, yeah, Dick Grayson is on John Paul Valley's level. But on top of that, John Paul has all these different gadgets and trying to use them against Dick Grayson. But Dick still knows ways to overcome those different gadgets that John Paul is using. Now, after a while, we do get to the point where you have Dick Grayson lose. Now, the only reason why he does lose this battle, quotation marks, is because you have cops arrive and you have John Paul go out of his way to attack the cops. But you have Dick Grayson get in the way of the attacks of John Paul Valley. And so, unfortunately, that right there removes Dick Grayson from the book now, because now it all comes down to John Paul fighting against Bruce Wayne. And so while you have John Paul being able to get back over to the Batcave, he thinks, okay, somebody's here. It has to be Robin, because he also believes that Batman is still dead, because again, he has no idea that Batman has survived the explosion. But he wants to go ahead and kill off Robin, except when he gets up into the manor, nah. He is confronted by Bruce Wayne, and this leads into the big battle between these two characters. So as we get into the final part of the storyline, guys, let me tell you, the opening pages of this chapter is pretty wild to me because, okay, so you have Bruce Wayne tell John Paul Valley like, hey, let's talk. And you have John Paul say, no, get out of here. Now for Bruce Wayne, you can kind of tell that in his head, he's trying his best to hold back from being like this sarcastic person, because you have John Paul saying, get out of here. But Wayne Manor is owned by Bruce Wayne. Is Bruce saying, you can't kick me out of my own house? Like, I own this place. What in the world are you talking about? But it's also John Paul saying that he is Batman. Like, Batman was his creation. But for Bruce, again, it's like, what are you talking about? Because I was the one who had created Batman. But for John Paul Valley, there's no way that Bruce would be the one to create that mantle, because Bruce Wayne is a privileged man. His father and mother's money gave him everything. There's no way that he should be able to create a mantle like Batman. Now, you do have John Paul Valley try to attack Bruce Wayne, and Bruce was able to get out of the way. But when he turned back around, he realized that John Paul Valley had gone into the Batcave. Now, the usual way that Bruce goes, he knows it's most likely booby-trapped. But you have Bruce say, don't worry, there is another way for me to get into the Batcave. And that would be the whole idea of using the entrance that Bruce had found when he was a young boy, the same one he fell into that his father had to help him get out of. But either way, it's Bruce Wayne's way of getting back into the Batcave and to hopefully find a way to bring down John Paul Valley. Now, when Bruce does arrive, he realized that he can't find John Paul anywhere. He's wondering where in the world John Paul has gone to. And you have Bruce Wayne being able to find John Paul very easily. Now, to kind of go ahead and get into the ending of the storyline, we kind of go ahead and get to the point where you have Bruce Wayne get the attention of John Paul, but goes back into the cave that he came from earlier. Now, for John Paul's bat suit, he's not really able to go deeper into the cave. And so, unfortunately for John Paul, he has to go ahead and take off most of the armor suit that he had created, except for the mask. And so once he's able to get close enough to Bruce Wayne, Bruce realized what time it is. And of course, it's now the morning. The sun is coming up. And so you have John Paul stand in the right spot where the sun is able to beam right through the cave. And when it does, it hurts John Paul's eyes. And the reason why? Because the mask, the eyes of the mask were created for the night, not created for the morning, the sun. And so for John Paul, he has no choice but to go ahead and take off the mask. And so once you have John Paul take off the mask, it's him kind of realizing that he's not Batman, that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And Bruce realized what's wrong with John Paul. It's the whole idea that he's lonely, but at the same time, it's two men who are just riding in the dark. And now it's time for them to come out of the dark. And so you have Bruce say, John Paul, go, because what you need is to figure out who you are. You have always been that person trying to be somebody else. Azrael, like your father, or Batman, like me. But what you need is to figure out who you are, your own person. And the book ends on that note right there. I'm kind of like, man, that's a good ending right there. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all in the next comic book video. Later.